going to study in Tractate Bava Kamma, page 55. We'll start on 54b, 2 lines from the bottom of the page. Today we have a variety of subjects. First, we'll continue the subject of the previous daf, which is a juxtaposition between the two sets of the 10 commandments, Aseret Dibrot, the one in the book of Shmot in Parashat Yitro, the other one in the book of Dvarim, Parashat Vayetchanan. We're going to compare the two. Then, times allow, we go to the Hilchot Kil'ain, the rules of diverse kinds. Also, a little bit, dreams interpretations and the meaning of the dreams interpretation. Hold on for that. And times allow, we go to the Trumat HaDesher and Khatam Sofer, the great rabbis in the past generation, dealing with unpredictable bills, so invoices. Trace a situation happen, a fellow get late in a highway or driving before Shabbat, he ends up in different village in those years, and after 5 night services, someone invited him to spend the Shabbat together. He fed him, he gave him a place to stay and everything, but then on Motzei Shabbat, right after the Havdalah, guess what? He handed over to him an invoice, huge invoice. The question is that legal? Is that acceptable? And what's the variation based on our daf? שאל רבי חנינא בן עגיל את רבי חייא בר אבא, מפני מה בדיברות הראשונות, the first set of the 10 commandments, פרשת יתרו, לא נאמר בהם טוב. It doesn't use the term tov, good. What does that mean? So, again, we're dealing here with juxtaposition between the two sets. As you know, we have in the book of Shmot, book of Exodus, the set in Parashat Yitro. And the 5th commandment said, honor your father and your mother. So your life, leman yitav lach, that you have tov, that you have a good life. So, first and foremost, the question that Pnei Yoshua asked, why do you have these two sets? If you tell me that the essence, the ikar, is the first set of the 10 commandments, so the second one is kind of Mishneh Torah that Moses repeats, but it's kind of hard to say. Why? Because one of the famous statements is Shamor veZachor, safeguard and remember the Sabbath, the Shabbat, bedibur echad nemru. They said in one time, in one set. So it's hard kind to say that it's just a two section of the 10 commandments. So there are many interpretations. Some say that not everything was written in Yitro. Some say that God said it bevat achat in one time, but then the way that Moses conveyed it was in a slow motion. But anyway, the Ktav Sofer, the great rabbi in Hungary, he talked about Rabbi Natan Adler. Rabbi Natan Adler was the luminary rabbi in that time, in the past generation. And he never wrote all of his Chidushei Torah, all of his tremendous amount of scholarship. And he said, in general, the oral Torah we are prohibited to write is only by force of circumstance. And he said, since by him it wasn't such a thing of shichecha, forgetfulness, so therefore he kept it without putting in writing. It reminded me my great-grandfather, the great Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk. The story, the tale of Mandech Hasidim is that his son Elazar conveyed in writing his Torah teaching in the book Noam Elimelech. But anyway, if you said so about great people like Rabbi Natan Adler, how much so when it's come to Amoraim? So therefore, there are many explanations for the meaning of the definition of the Tov, the good. The Rabbeinu Eliyahu of Vilna, the Gra, the Pnei Yoshua, they try to say that the difference between this world and the world to come. If you remember when we studied Tractate Kiddushin in the first parak, in the first chapter, it was a disputation between Rabbi Yaakov and the sages. What does that mean, Leman Yitav Lach? Famous story that it was a father that asked his son to go and release Shiluach Haken. There's only 2 times in the Torah. The Torah said clearly that you get a reward in this life by having length of life. The biblical commandment of honoring parents and the biblical commandment of releasing the mother bird. So the story goes that the father asked his son to go and release a bird, and he went on a letter and he released a bird, which means he fulfilled 2 mitzvot, honoring your father and releasing the bird, and guess what? The letter fell and he passed away. So that was the big question of the faith. What does that mean by saying so? The Khatam Sofer, he brings the famous Gemarrah that four great sages entered to the orchard, meaning the orchard of learning. And one of them, Hetzitz v'nivga, one of them entered and was harmed, which is the famous Elisha ben Avuya. They use the term Sifrei Minin Noshri Mecheko, which means that he, in one hand, was a teacher of Rabbi Meir, which again was the key rabbi at that time in the Talmud. So the Khatam Sofer explained based on the Avetz. He said that if you examine, for example, the expulsion of the Jews in 1492 in Spain, the Jews who are very intellectual did not survive. Abraham Signor and others. Those simple people who just follow in the full heart, maybe gullibly, but follow in full heart, that's the way things should be, Emunat Mima, that's those who survive. Those who do in Hakira, searching everything meaning, sometimes Hetzitz v'nivga, go and harm themselves. So even the Talmud said about Elisha ben Avuya that he heard this phrase, Shuvu banim shovavim chutz me'acher, which is in a way he has his own interpretation, but if it was without Hakira, without going to the details, if you just make teshuvah, according to Ya'avetz, Khatam Sofer and others, it will have a mechilat avonot, forgiven. But in any case, בדיברות הראשונות, in the first set of commandment, the word good, they not state in the first version. ובדיברות האחרונות, however, the later version, which is in the Parashat Vayetchanan, the book of Dvarim, in the set of the 10 commandments, 55, נאמר בהם טוב. So the mitzvah said, when it's come to honor father and mother, they said tov. So why you don't have the root, the Hebrew word tov, at the first set, the same as it's written in the second one? Because the second one, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 16, they said, Leman ya'arichun yamecha, you have a length of life, uleman yitav lach. Yitav lach, meaning that you have a good life on earth. אמר לו, רבי חנינא responded, says, עד שאתה שואלני למה נאמר בהם טוב, before you're asking why we said the word טוב, good, שאלני אם נאמר בהם טוב אם לאו, שאני יודע אם נאמר בהם טוב אם לאו, which means, I don't know if in this type of word is written in the second set. So, Tosfot in Bava Batra 113 said that you take it literally, but the others, the Rif and others said that it's implied for the sin of golden calf. So, כלך אצל רבי תנחום בר חנילאי, שהיה רגיל אצל רבי יהושע בן לוי, שהיה בקיא בהגדה. So you have to go to, Maratz Chayut said that you have to go for the expert. Each rabbi in a way has a specialty. And it was a rabbi that was expert in exegesis, which means the expert in agada, in rabbinic literal interpretations. The Gemarrah in Bava Batra tells us that Moses wrote the entire Torah, and the Et Parashat Bilam, and also the portion of Bilam. What's the meaning? So the Mefarshim explains that he has the capability, Moshe Rabbeinu, alav shalom, not only to switch to Lashon HaKodesh, but also to pull out all the bad energy, the bad statements that Bilam puts. So the same here, Azal Legabei, Rabbi Chanina ben Agil went to see Rabbi Tanchum ben Chanilai, and he asked that question. Amar lei, Rabbi Tanchum said, Mimenu, from Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, lo shamati, I did not heard answer to that question. אלא כך אמר לי שמואל בר נחום אחי אמו של רבי אחא ברבי חנינא ואמר לה אבי אמו של רב אחי ברבי חנינא. The reason that we did not have the route word of Tov in the first set of commandment, הואיל וסופן להשתבר, since it was already prognostications, it was prophesied that they're going to break the 10 commandments, so therefore you don't have the letter Tov. So he said, וכי סופן להשתבר, my havi. So if you tell me that the end destiny is ultimately to break, what of it? What's the... So they said, Amar Rav Ashi, Chas v'shalom paskat tova mi-Yisrael. Do not even think that way, that the, God forbid, cease from Israel once they were broken. Don't even think that way. So the Maharal said that it's all depend upon the status that the nation before the golden calf, which is, they reach a level in a way like angel, like heavenly entities. The second one that was Ma'aseh Adam, that made by Moses, so they said Madrega after, Madrega Acharei, that there's a level after they committed the sin, that which was a different level. Michtav Meliyahu and others have interpretation, but Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon said, Gufei Torah, the essence of the Torah, merumazim, implied in the Ten Commandments, excluding the letter Tet, you do not see it, which is the implication of Tov. So the Torah Chaim asks a question. We see the word Lema'an ya'arichun yamecha, that you should have a long life. So it means when it was broken, the broken tablets, they made a mistake, they made an error of the golden calf. So that caused the galut. Lema'an yirbu yemeichem al ha'adama, the sin of the golden calf caused the exile. So therefore, you don't see the word Tov, which means that you not have Hafsakat HaTov mi Israel. You don't have any manner of goodness that God forbid seeds among the Jewish people. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said to him, Haro'et tet b'chalomo siman yafelo. Now we digress to another phase, saying that if one see the letter, the Hebrew letter Tet in his dream, it's a good sign. Ma'itama, why it's a good sign? Ilema mishum dechtiv tov, because it's written with the Tet. Eima v'ti atea tia b'ma'atatei ashmad. This is a pasuk in Isaiah 14 that speak about crisis. So it's like a person cleaning his home. So they said Chat Tet Ka'amrinan, which is only one time. So the Pitchei Tshuva bring a book called Perach Shushan, and he said if someone see himself that he's make a vow, Ra'a shenadar vehetir, and not tzarich la'atir, he doesn't need to have annulment of his vow. But if he see nidui, if he see some matter of excommunication, he needs to have hatara. So the truth is, in many places you see Chalomot Shavi Daber, that the dreams are only kind of imagination. I think one of the secular psychologists, first we all know Sigmund Freud, but even his students like Carl Jung or Adler, they believe that big part of that is a reflection of the subconscious, or what the person thinking during the day. There is a book called Imrei Shefer, Rabbi Yosef Kluger. He asked a question. We all know the story of the biblical Joseph in the book of Genesis, Yosef HaTzadik, that he saw dreams. The text said, "V'ineh anachnu me'almim alumim betoch hasadeh." And then he sees all these sheaves, and his brothers, the others, bow down to him. In the same, he saw the sun and the moon bow down to him. So he asked a question, why you need all those dreams? If he was destined to be the king or viceroy king of Egypt, so you do it with skipping all these dreams. So he explained that God give a person a gift, but in a way, that gift will granted to him or her only by essence of making tefillah, or making a special prayer in advance, which means you are destined to get $10 million, all right? But you have to make a special prayer asking for that. So therefore, God created those dreams in order to bring to Yosef a prayer for Melucha, and therefore he knows V'yedal Mashi Vakesh, he knows what he is asking for. That's the book Imrei Shefer to attribute to Rabbi Yosef Kluger. Anyway, Eima Tumata Beshulea. We soon, unfortunately, going to read the book of Lamentations by Jeremiah, the book of Eicha. Is in the first chapter, verse 9, they said, Tum'ata beshulea, the sins of the people in Yerushalayim was apparent to all. So that's the Jeremiah lament over the sins, all the iniquities that were made in Yerushalayim publicly. So they said, Tet bet ka'amrinan, which means Tav, Tov, that is a good sign. That's the Maharsha said. So he said, Eima tav'u va'aretz she'area. It's also again negative sentence that said in Eicha in Lamentation chapter 2 verse 9. So he said, that's again speak about the crisis of Yerushalayim. Her gates have sunk into the earth. So that's again expression of sadness, implication of galut in Eicha. So he said, Ela ho'il ufatach bo hakatuv letovat chila. Since the pasuk, the first tet in the Torah, it's written in the opening in the sense of goodness. So therefore, shemi bereshit ad vayar elokim et haor, from the beginning of the bereshit, very beginning, the first word in Torah until the verse, and God saw that the light was good, tov. La ktiv tet, the letter tet is not written anywhere. So the Pri Tzaddik derived from that every time that Torah said a pasuk was special the first time, that's the Metziut Ikarit, that's the source, that's the core, that's the essence of that. Rabbunim said, the great Hasidic Rebbe said, Ve'ata amarta heitev eitiv imach. So why you repeat the word heitev eitiv twice? So the idea is, Kol man de'ovid rachmon eletav, whatever God's made, we always said is for the best. However, many times, unfortunately, we do not understand why God does certain things in certain way. There is a wonderful book called Shirei Maskil. Shirei Maskil is a book written by the rabbi of Kolomar. It was a great, unbelievable, great writings. So he explained there this deep mystical concept of whatever Hashem did, Kol ma de'avid, letav avid. So he said, even a person face all kind of challenges and crises, he always have to remember. He said it on Shirei Maskil, in my best recollection, page 121. So he said there that if a person understands very deeply all the times that everything that happened to him is Hashem, is God destined to happen. For example, you see a kids, God forbid, throwing a stone on a dog, right? And some dog's reaction, they start beating up the stone. Instead of understanding that it's not the stone, it's the one who throw the stone on the dog. So a person should understand, and when he or she facing crisis, it's not that person, it's the one who creates that situation in order for him to open his heart and do teshuvah. All of those crises the person have in a daily basis is based on the idea that God's love you and God wants you to open your heart and do teshuvah. So that's the prayer we said, Hareini Hashem Chazdecha, that we should always see the positive in any situation that looks not so great. V'amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Haroeh hesped bechalomo. If a person see that they kivyachal, they do a funeral service for him, they give a eulogy on his behalf for him, chasu alav min hashamayim uvda'uhu, which means in heaven they have compassion upon him and redeeming from crisis that decree upon him. So v'hanemile bichtava. So it's not that they show him event, they just show him the words hesped. That's the Torat Chaim and Maharshal, Maharsha, and others explain. Kra roa gzar dineinu. That's the koach hatzadik, that's the power of the righteous person. He can use from the word nega to the word oneg, from crisis to happiness, from hesped to the word pada, ra from bad to good. The next subject is about diverse kind. So וכן חייב העוף כיוצא בהם. אמר יש לקיש כאן שנה רבי תרנגול טווס ופסיוני כלאיים זה בזה. So here we talk about the undomesticated animals, bird, the subject of the האחרות of domesticated animals. So Eish Lakish said that we learn from it a cock, a peacock, and a pheasant are diverse kind with respect to each other, which means that we, Tosfot explained, we have this issue, Rashi do, the whole issue of kil'aim, which the idea is diverse kind, if they can cohabit and be together. Pshita Marav Chaviva, Mishum deravu ba'adeh, because they raised together, ma'odetema min chadu, you may think that they are one species, kamash melan, that is called a different one, and therefore we have this prohibition to merge them together, to have them cohabited with each other. So Rashba explained, because they raised together, so therefore you call it kilaim, you call it diverse car, because you see kvasim and izim, you see goat and lamb, for example, that they raised together. So he said, even you see tarnegol find a small tavas, a small peacock, right? So he said in the name of the right way that that's the whole idea. Even nowadays, there are so many species of those animals. But anyway, it's a big discussion among the rabbis how far you go with it. Amar Shmuel avaz va'avaz abar. So Shmuel said, when you talk about domestic goose and wild goose, so kilaim zebazeh, they are diverse kind with respect to each other, and they are not one species. So they are basically two. The Khatam Sofer said is a big teshuvah about a wild goose, because he said that if he enter wild goose to other goose that they are pure, he bring the Gemarrah and Bchorot, Khatam Sofer bring the Gemarrah and Bchorot that said that you're not allowed to mix tameh and tahor, pure and impure. Cannot put it together. So it's a big question about the Masoret when it comes to birds, when it comes to turkey. It's a big question. What is the Masoret? You allow, you're not allowed. There's a book called Arugot HaBosem. Arugot HaBosem said that if you have simanim vetoref, that this animal have this type of behavior, so you need Masoret. But without toref, you don't need Masoret. But since in nowadays the mixer, the diverse kind, always need to go and ask a permanent posek what is allowed, what is not. But anyway, matkif la Rav Hanan Mai Ta'ama, why it's considering a separate species. Again, the goose and wild goose. Ila mishum de hayarich korei vai zutar korei. You may said, you know why? Because the beak of this one is long and the beak of that one is short. So he said that gamla parsa ve gamla taya'a. If you have a camel that is Persian or Arab camel, the hay alim koe v'hay ketin koe, that one have a large neck, one have a small. Hachename, you can say the avu kilaim ze bazeh. You mean to say that they consider diverse kind for each other because the limb has a different size? Amar Abaye ze beitzav mibachutz v'ze beitzav mibefnim. He said that the wild goose have the testicle are visible from outside, and the domestic goose is the testicle inside. So he said, Amar Rav Papa, ha te'una chada be'ata b'shichla, ve'a te'una kama be'ata b'shichla. When you speak about the female, so you have the wild goose releases only one egg in its ovary, and later releases another, and the domestic goose releases several eggs at once in its ovary. So you see, as a result, they are not considered to be the same species. So the Rebbe of Rozhin, the Admor of Rozhin, he said in the Shabbat Tshuva, he said Shabbat Shira. So he said that people use the Perek Shira, you know, this beautiful book with pictures. There are people who does this beautiful Perek Shira. So he said the klavim omrim, the dog said so and so, the lion said so and so. So he asked a question, the original Rebbe, he says, is that true? That the lion said so and so, the dog said so and so? What does that mean? So he explained, Kabbalistically, mystically, that there is concept that is called Malach HaMemuneh. There is ministering angel that in charge for every entity of every creature. So therefore, for every nation, there is a Malach HaMemuneh. For us, it's a little different. If a person zorche, if a person ever married, he can do the shira independently. If not, he has to be connected to a tzaddik, to a righteous person. But if not, then it's different. There's a famous story about Rabbi Natan Shimon. He saved the original Rebbe at the time of crisis. So he carried him on his shoulder and crossed a river. And the story goes, in the middle of the road, he said to the Rebbe, I'm stopping here, only I continue if you promise me with all my sins to have Olam Haba, to have Gan Eden. So the Rebbe said, you get it. So they continue, and shortly afterward he passed away. So right after that, the Rebbe get together the Hasidim, and he spell out all the sin that this fellow did. And the Hasidim was wondering why he is doing that. So later, the son of the original Rebbe explains that his father did it because ein teshuva bli vidui. You don't do an act of teshuva without a confession. And since this person have the merit that my father said a vidui for him, instead of having the sitra achra, the other side, the evil side, the Satan said, or others, so even he is in Gan Eden, he still need to be connected to the tzaddik. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Reish Lakish, Amarbiya Shnei Minim Shebayam Lokeh. He said, if someone cross-beards two species of creatures that live in a sea, is flag for transgression, the prohibition of cross-bearing diverse kind. So obviously the rabbi said that you cannot do a cross-bearing with fish, because they are in the water. But Tosfot said, and Yerushalmi said, that certain species in the water is possible. My tama, what's the reason? So we derive from the idea on Shabbat. The Torah said that it's prohibited not only for you, but also behemtecha, also your animal. The Leviticus 19 said that you are prohibited to cross-beard diverse kind of animals. And he said, Amar Rabba Barabba Mishmei Deula Atya Lemineu Mineu Miyabasha. So you derive the word in verbal juxtaposition using leminehu, using two times in the context of land animal. Just as it is prohibited to make diverse kinds of land animal, so too it's prohibited to make diverse kind of aquatic creatures. So even it's written leminehem. Anyway, Ba'era Chava, Amanig be'iza v'shibuta. So Chava present a predicament. One who derive a wagon on a seashore with goat and a shibuta. So shibuta, it's a large fish. It's the Rabbi Akiva Iger said shibuta bring Gemarrah in Avodah Zarah 39, and also Tosfot there, that they call it ez, a special goat of the water. So it's connected with a special chevel, with special string to the boat. And as the goat is in the yabasha, in the dry land, and the shibuta is in the water, which is a min tahor. So is that considering kilai? The Moshe Feinstein's famous statement said, when the Torah said, Lo tachrosh b'shoro v'chamor yachdav, you should not plow with the donkey and the ox together. The key word is what? Yachdav. The question is, here you have yachdav, since one is the water, one is in the dry land. The Ber Maim Chaim said that shibuta mocha have the taste like white meat, like pig. So he said that the people will taste it, see that it's not the reason for their desire. The Arvei Nachal said that the reason they allow shibuta mocha, it's because the righteous people will know what it's all about and save from the sin. The Rabbi Yosef Engel said that this is really Surei Torah, or is just a minagim. So he said, Kil'aim, when diverse kind, since we have offenses, the chashash, the concern that a person can go to Arba'at Kil'aim. So here, since as the goat is not go to the water, and vice versa, is not go to the dry land. So Marash Engel said, based on that, you have those institutions that take certain lab test and to check. For example, they cook meat and milk together. So the idea is, some people think, but not going to eat it. But the truth is, he explained that etzem abishul, the essence of cooking them together, it's a problem. That's the din. That anyway, since neither one of them go to the other domain, neither one the one is in the dry land not go to the water not go to dry land, or Dilma, Hashtamiat Kamanig, or you say that now the fact is that he is leading the wagon with the goat and the shibuta, and this violates the prohibition against doing work with two species together. מתקיף לרבינה אלא מעתה חיבר חיטה וסורה בידו וזרע חיטה בארץ וסורה בחוץ על הארץ אך אינם דמחייב. So it gave diverse kind of barley grain in his hand and wheat grain. So you can say that the same way is liable. We never heard that this mixture. אמרי אחרי אשתה ארץ, the land of Israel מקום חיובה. That's the איסור ליזרעים that's applied there. חוץ על הארץ לא מקום חיובה. Outside of Israel, it's not part of the area of liability. If one would plant both seeds outside of the land, he will certainly not be liable, because the area outside of the land is completely excluded from the prohibition. So they said, Hacha, but here, in the goat and the shibuta, both the land and the sea are area of kilayim liability. So therefore, the quandary was not reconciled. Now, based on that, the Imre Emet on Parashat Mishpatim, he said, when we have the law of Shabbat, so the Torah said, Leman yanuach shorcha v'chamorecha, so the ox and donkey should rest on Shabbat. So you ask a question, that's the goal of Shabbat? So the animals rest? So he said, the Gemarrah tells us a story about Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta. Remember we studied it? Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta, he has a cow. One day he sold a cow to a non-Jew. Right after Shabbat, the non-Jew came to him and says, sorry, it's no deal. He says, why? He says, the cow refused to walk on Shabbat. So that fellow went to a cow and whispered to the ear of the cow that I sold you and you're no longer part of my property, and therefore you can walk on Shabbat. And sure enough, the cow walked on Shabbat. So when the non-Jews heard that, he converted to Judaism. He was so impressed with that, and he is the Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta. So he said, that's the concept. Leman yanuach, the Torah wants us to teach that the idea, the Shmirat Shabbat, the observing Shabbat, that even your animals aware of the value of Shabbat, and that the whole idea of Shabbat is to Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim, to remember the Exodus from Egypt, and that's the will of Hashem. Because Ki Sheshet Yamim Asa Hashem et HaShamayim v'et Haaretz, because 6 days Hashem quote unquote walk heaven and earth, and the 7th day Shabbat v'hi nafas. So the observing of Shabbat is chazakah, that also the ox, the donkey, the animals aware of that. I knew, it's a matter of fact, in Haifa, my mom told me a story about a lady that owned a car mechanic, she and her husband, and her husband passed away, so she sold it. So she sold it to a secular. The secular came back and he says that there's a big problem with the dogs. It was several dogs. He tried to feed them on Shabbat, and they refused to take the food because the guy used to close the door, and on Friday give them double portion, and that's the way the dogs train. Anyway, Adran alach shor shenagach et hapara. Perek Shishi HaKones, the 6th chapter HaKones, page 55b. A little emotional, little short note. The first time I studied this perek, about 40-some years ago. And now I have the privilege in different language to teach, to share it. It's get me emotional because that was one of the perakim that we put a lot of effort in our young childhood. In my best recollection, we study Elu Metziot in Kita Bet, which is about 7-8 years old, and we study HaKones in my best recollection when we are 9 or 10 years old. So anyway, it's 40 years back. So now the Mishnah defines the degree in which one must supervise his sheep to prevent it from damaging someone else's property. So this chapter is going to deal with obviously with a goring, with a pit, but it starts with the shen v'regel. So akones tzon ledir, one who brought his flock of sheep into a pen. ונעל בפניה כראוי, and he locked the door properly. And later the Gemara have a big discussion. What does that mean, properly? How you define properly? ויצאה והזיקה, פטור. So then the animal went out and caused damage to another person's fields. That's the shen, eating produce, or regel, trampling it. So the owner exempt. Why? Rashi explained, he did the proper guardian, and what can he do? Now we enter the domain of different level of shmirah, which we're going to study soon. There's one called shmirah pchuta, lower level of guardian, and the other one is the shmirah me'ula, the highest level. Lo na'al befanea karaui. So another thing I want you to know in the historical context. In those years, they used to do zibulei sadot. So they put the animals in the fence, in a special area, and then they do that for their fields. So lo na'al befanea karaui, if he did not lock the door properly, ויצאה והזיקה חייב, the animal went out and caused damage, so he is liable to pay. נפרצה בלילה, but if unfortunately the owner locked the door properly and the wall of the pen was breached at night, so Rabbeinu Moshe Israelish, the Ramah, have a discussion over that, because he said, if you have a yard and you didn't lock the gate, and a thief came from his gate to the neighbor's gate and went to the house of the neighbor and stole something. So the neighbor came to him and said, you did not lock your gate, and because of that the thief entered to the yard of yours and then entered to mine. So you are garamta, you are the source for that crisis. So Ramah said that he chayav, that he is liable. But the two bring from his father the rosh, and he said, how do you lemaisa? How you put his liability? He didn't do a kinyan. He didn't do a matter of acquisition that caused him. What exactly kinyan? Maseh kinyan make him mazik. Anyway, so or shepratzu alistin, or you have a thieves that came out and broke it, bandits, etc. So v'yatzah ve'zika patur, it's caused damage, is exempt. Bachama. הוציאו הליסטים, ליסטים חייבים. If the bandits did it, so obviously they are liable. The robbers are liable. Now, הניחה בחמה, if you leave the sheep in the sun, so you know the Gemara said that the animals does their very best not to be in a too hot temperature. או שמסרה לחורש שוטה וקטן, or he brings the animal to a deaf person or someone who's degraded or a minor, ויצאה והזיקה חייב. So the animal went out and caused damage, so the owner of the animal is liable. מסרה לרועה, but if you give it to a professional shepherd, נכנס הרועה תחתיו. So the shepherd assumed the responsibility for the animal in his place. So again, that's called the pikadon. He gave it and he told him to guard it. But he said, nafla lagina, if the animal fell into a garden and therefore venehenet, and derived benefit from the produce in the garden, meshalemet mashenenet, the owner pays for the benefits it drives and not for other damage that cause. Yardal kedarka ve'ezika, if the animal descended into the garden in the usual way and caused damage, so he pays whatever the damage. Meshalem and Mashe Zika. So now the Gemara, the Mishnah had different views in regard to appraisal of the nizkei shen, of the damage caused by tooth. Keitzad meshalem et Mashe Zika. How the rabbinic court appraises a large piece of land with an area required for sowing for this type of payment. So they said, shamin betzeh abot hasadeh kama hayta yafa v'kama hi yafa. You have evaluation how this was the sowing one se'ah of seed in the field, how much it was worth before the animal damage and how much is after. Rabbi Shimon Omer, achla perot gmurim, if the animal ate already fully ripe, total ripe produce, משלם את פירות גמורים. So he pays the value of ripe produce. אם שאה, שאה. אם שעתיים, שעתיים. If it's the volume of consumed produce or was a שאה, so you pay for a שאה. Two שאה, שעתיים. So the Rabbi Shimon said that leniency, as she explained, it's unripe produce, because if the animal ate total ripened produce, the owner needs to pay the same as produce that detach from the tree. So the idea of Chishuv Klali, how you take together all the matter to the account, when he needs tzarich ta'adama, when he needs the ground. But there is a big discussion among the poskim about hana'ah, about derivative of benefit from that. Because you see in many places in halakha, you see here's the derivative. Someone leave, I heard it once personally from Rabbi Ovadia, Yosef alav shalom, that they ask people to leave the home early before Shabbat. You know, one of the things that if you don't like your mother-in-law, you know, you come the last moment before Shabbat when they're all nervous. So please don't do that. But what you should do is to leave your home earlier and not get stuck in traffic. As a matter of fact, I have the pleasure to suffer from that more than once. You know, the kids leave their home and they leave late, and then they're stuck in traffic, and they turn back, and I pick up the kids, some of them earlier. So I'm stuck for good, for Shabbos, with my 3 grandkids here. And it was just the winter time, and they realized when they left their home that it's too late. So the idea is a person should make the arrangement to leave early enough and not to stuck in traffic or not to get the last moment before Shabbat. But this was a case that the Trumat Adeshen have a discussion. The fellow was stuck in traffic and realized that it's too late, so he stopped in one of those villages. He stopped in that village, and he went to his shul, and everything is lovely, and the fellow took him to his house. He was in heaven. He fed him the best gefilte fish and the best matzah ball and the best chicken or whatever people eat. And all he ate and drank and married and slept, and he have a great Shabbos, Friday night, Shabbos morning, Shabbos Shuddis, Melave Malka, you name it. Shabbos is over, he gave me an invoice, huge bill. And he said, you owe me for the food, you owe me for the hotel, you owe me for all of that. So the question is, the Trumat Adeshen said, on the surface, for sure he needs to pay him, because he derived benefit from it. Even the other fellow was unscrupulous, right? Wasn't honest, tell him in advance it's going to cost him. But the Khatam Sofer said that it's all depend upon the condition that he said in advance, based on our Mishnah. What exactly he was understanding between the two parties, and how far the other party is willing and ready to pay. Obviously, a person will not go to a hotel and right away, most of the people don't buy the fancy suite on the top floor. People usually get a, normal, you go on an airplane. Most of the people don't buy first class or business class, right? So obviously, has to be in a measure of what's the condition or what's the understanding between the two parties. But there's a beautiful Trumat Adeshen and Khatam Sofer in regards to that is Teshuvah. Tanu Rabbanan, ezeu karoi vezeu shelo karoi. The question is, what is considering locking the door properly, that the animal should not run away, and what is not? Which means if you have, the Yam Shlomo explained, if you have average door that can stand when it's a typical wind, not crazy wind, typical wind, so that's considering sufficient, that it's sufficient guardian. If you have a strong wind, almost hurricane, and that door not stand, that's already a problematic. It's not considering a proper guardian. Who is the Tana that said that when you have a forewarning ox, it's enough to have a lower level of guardian, because the Mishnah speak about the flock. So that's the damage of teeth, the shen and regel, the trampling, and not in keren. So Rashi and Tosfot explain that it's very uncommon to have this type of negligent or claim. Rabbi Yehuda Hidetnan, that's what Rabbi Yehuda teaches us earlier, what we studied in page 45b. If the owner is basically tied the ox with a rein, and he locked the gate before it properly, and even he did all of that, and he did the shmira meula, the proper way of guardian, regardless if it's innocuous or for warning ox, the owner chayav, divrei Rab Meir said that the owner is liable. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, tam chayav. If it's a regular innocuous, Rabbi Yehuda said that the lower level of guardian, Rashi said it's not sufficient for innocuous ox. And he says, therefore he's liable, but if it's mu'ad patur, but if it's for warning, he's exempt. שנאמר, ולא ישמרנו בעליו, הרי שמור הוא זה. It means that this one was totally guard. Rabbi Eliezer אומר, אין לו שמירה על הסכין. Rabbi Eliezer said, it's no mean to guard in this type of animal, only knife. You mean to say that you need to slaughter the animal. That's the only way to solve the problem, because if you keep it, then it's a trouble. And therefore, that's the solution. Quick solution, right? Get rid of the animal and that's it. So the late Rav of Moshav Bnei Re'em, it was a religious farm place in Israel. So it was a teshuvah from him about two neighbors. One have, I don't remember, a horse or cow or donkey, but anyway, the neighbor came in and he says that you didn't lock the door properly and your animal eating a lot of fruits for mine. So he said, what are you talking about? I put a door, I locked the door, I did everything. He says, come and see. And he noticed his animal, Chazirai, eating endless fruits from his place. So he brought his Tafshin Kaf, the year that this Teshuvah, he brought his brother, he wrote responder, it's called Shalot Teshuvot Shraga Meir. He said, the problem is the neighbor just confiscate the cow, because he said, if you don't pay me, I take the cow. So how exactly you treat it based on our Gemarrah. But anyway, the Torah asked for this type of shen regel that guarding require in the reduced level in their cases. These four categories the Torah have a reduced requirement of guardian. And which are they? Pit, fire, tooth, and trampling. Regel. Bor, when it's come to a pit, what the Torah said, if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover. So one can infer, hakisa patu, but if he covers it, he's exempt from liability, even though it is possible that the pit will become uncovered in the future. Next one is Esh. So, because Tosfot explained in others that the best way with pit is to fill it with dust. But the question is, how far you go? Is the Torah require itum, that total filling, or not? Is a Rashba in this. But anyway, Esh, fire, you need a reduced level of guardian. Dichtiv shalem shalem mavir et habeira. Ad David ke'en mavir. Torah said that the one who needed the fire shall pay the compensation, which means unless he acts in a manner that is similar to actively kindling the fire in another properties by being negligent. So it's a book, Mishpetei Shlomo, it's a beautiful book. He asked a question about the fellow. In the hotel they prohibited to light the Shabbat candles. It's well known. But there are people who don't care and do it. So as a fellow did it, and sure enough it was a wind next to the window, caused fire, freilech. Ruach shena mitzuya is strong wind. So the people, he said, this is not a normal wind. It's a huge wind came in, what do you expect me to do? So anyway, he needs to pay anyway, because the understanding when you get that room is that they put clear warning not to light candles in the room. Anyway, shen dechtiv u'bi'er b'sdei acher, ad David ke'en u'be'er. Regel dechtiv v'shilach, ad David ke'en v'shilach. The same manner of the teeth, the eating, and the same way as the trampling. He does, unless he acts in a manner which is similar to setting his animal loose. Betani v'shilach ze regel. We learn that v'shilach is referring to trampling. וכן הוא אומר, similarly we said in Isaiah 32, משלחי רגל השור והחמור, that send forth the feet of the ox and a donkey. So what does that mean? וביער זה השם וכן הוא אומר כשר ורגליו תומו. So this is the eating. We said that the book of Kings chapter 14, one consumes with a tooth until it be all gone. תמה דאביד כן ושילח וביער. So that's the mazid, he did it intentionally. הלא אביד לא. So again, you see here the difference is that he matched what Rabbi Meir said, that enough to have a reduced level, שמירה פרודה, the reduced level of guardian. אמר רבא מתנין נמדייקה, דקתני צאן. So Rava said that we can derive precisely from the Mishnah, because this says specifically with regard to sheep, because all the previous chapter what we study about damages and negligence that applies to ox. So therefore it says nitnei sho. So it's much better to use in the Mishnah the matter of an ox. Ma'ishna de katane itzon. What is the difference here that the Mishnah mentioned a sheep? Lav mishum da Torah miyata bishmiratam. It's not because the Torah reduced the level of the guardian. Lav mishum de kan keren lochtivat bei. Because when it's case of sheep, keren, the goring damage, is not written in connection with it. So therefore you have the shen v'regel damage is written in connection to it. We derive from that the shen and regel, the idea of eating and trampling, is considering a mu'adid for warning, mitchilatam, and that's we learn the lesson from it. So the big question is derivative from that. We know that the Bechor, the first son, get double portion. The big question presented by Reb Chaim Mitzanz, he asked a question, is that applied b'muchzak or bara'ui? What does that mean? For example, a person inherited a sacred book, Sifrei Kodesh. So is the Sifrei Kodesh, the Bechor, the first son, get double portion or not? For example, when it's come to etrog, or things like that, it doesn't have a price. So is that considered muchzak or ra'ui? So there is one of the Hungarian great rabbi, whose name is Rabbi David of Chanov. He said, it's always have a shovi, it's always have a value. And it's considered muchzak, because Bechor, the first son, needs to get something from everything. Like coin, in certain time is a different value. So it's considered muchzak b'bechor. Bechor, the first one, received double, even in that portion which is the Sifrei Kodesh and other manners that lichura it's a muchzak. It's not bera'ui, it's considering a muchzak.
Shula